We grew up very, very poor. My parents were never married. I never had an example of what marriage should look like, never had an example of what financial management looks like, never had an example of what anger management looks like, never had an example of what not doing drugs and just having a clean lifestyle look like. I never had an example of what not being sexually immoral looked like. I just never had an example of what normal life, like clean, healthy living was like. We grew up very, very poor, very unstable. When you grow up with drug addicts, what ends up happening is there's a phase, there's like a process that moves like a moon cycle where you have individuals who they'll use drugs because they got paid, whether it's their social security or their disability or welfare or whatever system they're frauding, they're
Yeah.
able to get their income. And then from that, they take that income and then they spend all their money on drugs. And that first day, like maybe they'll buy you a toy and their life seems pretty good that day and they're in a good mood because they have some money in their pocket. Day two, things are no longer good. Day three, they disappear. You don't see them for 3 or 4 days. And then, while you're in that down cycle, they're not there. My mom would disappear and we would be, kind of, and when I say we, me and my sister, she was a year and a half older than I was. We'd be alone in the house, right? 3 o'clock, or excuse me, 3 years old, 4 years old, for sometimes 2, 3 days, right? And just kind of figuring it all out. And so, while we were living that lifestyle, my dad was totally disconnected, doing his own thing. When I was about 5 years old, through one of his sparse visits, he came when my mom was in her bender and she was gone, and we ended up living with him for about 2 or 3 years. And he was a much more functioning crack addict, but still a crack addict nonetheless. He had a girlfriend who raised us really well for those 3 or 4 years, and she was really solid. She brought the stability in, but once he started beating her up, like she wasn't like my mom. She wasn't going to stand around and wait for that. So she left him, and his life fell apart. We moved back with my mom. Now I was about 9 years old, 8 years old, and just a lot of the same. She would sleep with guys for money. She would, you know, um, do whatever she had to do to keep the lights on, to keep the bills paid, and keep the habit going. But I'll tell you something about my mom, man. I'll tell you what, she was when I was born, she was about 30 years old, 29 or 30 years old when I was born. So she's my age roughly. I'm 33. And so I'll tell you what, man, there's one thing I say about that woman is that she never She never let us go to the foster care system that long, maybe a week, right? She always fought for us. She always found a way. And, you know, when addicts, people lose themselves entirely. And as bad as she got, she never really allowed us to get to that point. Um, and so, but just a lot of evictions, a lot of moving around. I lost my virginity when I was like 7 years old. I've been just, molested by women and just put into positions where you lose value on things quickly growing up. You move into survival mode, man, and so it's just about how you can take and take and take and win and steal, rob and kill and destroy whatever you got to do to get what you need.